Today, we're going to talk about a media favorite: culture wars. The phrase is common on the 24-hour news, but what does it actually mean? A culture war is defined as a conflict between two groups within a society, each of which seeks to establish the preeminence of its own beliefs, values, and practices. Used in the current American context, groups use cultural issues, like sexuality or family values, to mobilize political resources. We've seen this strategy employed effectively over the past year by the GOP. Whether it is abortion, gender, or race, the Republican Party has excelled at motivating its base with manufactured controversies that create unity within their ranks and division within the country. Let's start with one of the most enduring controversies in America: abortion. Ohio conservatives unveiled a new anti-abortion bill last week that manages to go farther than Texas's maligned Senate Bill 8. Representative Jenna Powell, a Republican from Troy, introduced House Bill 480, co-sponsored by 34 other Republicans. Like the Texas law, House Bill 480 incentivizes private citizens to sue anyone who performs or knowingly engages in conduct that aids or abets the performance or inducement of an abortion for a minimum of $10,000. However, unlike Senate Bill 8, Ohio's proposed bill outlaws all abortion in the state, both before and after the 6-week mark. The sanctity of human life, born and preborn, must be preserved in Ohio, Powell said in a statement. Abortion kills children, scars families, and harms women. We can and must do better. Ohio previously passed a so-called heartbeat bill banning abortion after 6 weeks. It was approved in 2019 by a 56-40 margin in the House and an 18-13 vote in the Senate. District Judge Michael Barrett, a G.W. Bush appointee, ultimately prevented the law from taking effect, but advocates worry the passage of the heartbeat bill indicates a high likelihood that House Bill 480 will succeed in the legislature. Even Ohio cities are joining in on the anti-abortion fervor. Mason became the second city in the state to ban abortion within city limits last month, joining fellow Warren County city Lebanon in outlawing the procedure. Neither city had an abortion clinic to begin with. The ordinance, adopted by a 4-3 vote of Mason's City Council, reads in part: The City Council finds that 1. Human life begins at conception. 2. Abortion is a violent act which purposely and knowingly terminates an unborn human life which is distinctly separate from the mother, and dependent upon the mother as his or her life support system. 3. Unborn human beings are entitled to the full and equal protection of the laws that prohibit violence against other human beings. We declare Mason, Ohio, to be a sanctuary city for the unborn. Moving next to Texas, where schools have taken center stage in the culture wars. This is State Representative Matt Krause, a Republican from Fort Worth. He sent a letter to the Texas Education Agency last month, announcing an investigation into books that may make students feel psychological distress. The letter included a 16-page list of around 850 books, asking superintendents of school districts around the state to confirm whether their schools possess any content on the list. The targeted books include Pulitzer Prize-winning William Styron novel The Confessions of Nat Turner, John Irving's The Cider House Rules, Alan Moore's V for Vendetta, Ta-Nehisi Coates's Between the World and Me, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, and other titles related to racial justice, sex education, equal rights, and LGBTQ topics. Krause also directs the school districts to identify any books not on the list that might make students feel discomfort, guilt, or anguish. Please identify any other books or content in your district, specifying the campus location and funds spent on acquisition, that address or contain the following topics: human sexuality, sexually transmitted diseases, sexually explicit images, graphic presentations of sexual behavior that is in violation of the law, or contain material that might make students feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress because of their race or sex, or convey that a student, by virtue of their race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. Texas House Democrats accused Krause of using the issue as a campaign stunt, meant to elevate his stature in a crowded primary for Attorney General. Krause has a prominent ally in his effort to scrub libraries of LGBTQ and sex education content. Governor Greg Abbott sent his own letter to state education agencies on Monday, decrying their resistance to his censorship. As you are aware, a growing number of parents of Texas students are rightfully outraged about highly inappropriate books and other content in public school libraries. The most disturbing cases include material that is clearly pornographic, which has absolutely no place in the Texas public education system. Instead of addressing the concerns of parents and shielding Texas children from pornography in public schools, the Texas Association of School Boards has attempted to wash its hands clean of the issue by abdicating any and all responsibility in the matter. I am directing the Texas Education Agency, the Texas State Library and Archives Commission, and the State Board of Education to immediately develop statewide standards to prevent the presence of pornography and other obscene content in Texas public schools, including in school libraries. Not to be limited to one culture war, the Texas legislature went all in on the critical race theory hysteria over the summer, with a ban on teaching about systemic racism in the state's schools. The impact of such crusades against anti-racism education have been felt down to the smallest district. Take for instance, Colleyville, Texas, home to just 26,000 people. On Tuesday, the local high school's first black principal announced he has reached an agreement with the district to remain on paid administrative leave, after he was ostensibly ousted for promoting critical race theory. The saga began in July when former Texan school board candidate Stetson Clark publicly accused Principal James Whitfield of teaching critical race theory.
Tonight, I would like to express my concerns, not only of myself, but of many in our community, about the implementation of critical race theory in our district, specifically the views and goals of the principal of Colleyville Heritage High School, James Whitfield. I was first made aware of Mr. Whitfield's extreme views on race when a concerned friend of mine shared with me a letter he sent to parents and students in the summer of 2020. In this letter, he promotes the conspiracy theory of systemic racism. Systemic racism is the belief that all institutions in the United States, from the federal government to the state government, to any private businesses, down to our local school district, have been purposefully designed to oppress non-white peoples and students, and ensure that only white students and people succeed. Later in this letter, he goes further,
Mr. Tesson,
all members of our
Mr. Clark, we really prefer that you don't criticize a particular employee of the district.
Okay.
If you have any issues,
How about you fire me? How's that?
Sir,
How about you fire me?
sir.
Because of his extreme views, I ask that a full review of Mr. Whitfield's tenure in our district be examined and that his contract be terminated effective immediately.
Soon after, Whitfield was put on paid leave and the superintendent asked the district to terminate his contract, despite protests from students supporting their principal. Whitfield responded to the critical race theory panic with a Facebook post. At the last Grapevine Colleyville Independent School District School Board meeting, an individual was allowed to speak my name in a public open forum against the rules, and I can no longer maintain my silence in the face of this hate, intolerance, racism, and bigotry. For the better part of the last year, I've been told repeatedly to just get around the fact that there are some racist people, and just deal with it and stay positive, each time the racist tropes reared their heads, but I will stay silent no longer. I am not the CRT, critical race theory, boogeyman. I am the first African American to assume the role of principal at my current school in its 25-year history, and I am keenly aware of how much fear this strikes in the hearts of a small minority, who would much rather things go back to the way they used to be. Whitfield explains that after the murder of George Floyd, the collective action of communities across the country inspired him to write a letter to the community encouraging others not to grow weary in the battle against systemic racism and to commit to being an anti-racist. It was this letter that Clark referenced at the school board meeting, enraging parents who believe that discussions of racism have no place in educators' lives, let alone in schools. That's not the end of the story, though. Whitfield also revealed a previously unknown incident that may point to an ulterior motive in his ouster. A community member complained to school administrators about a photo he posted on his personal social media account of himself and his wife kissing on the beach. I checked my email and saw what they were talking about. Before I describe the email, I just want to point out for those who haven't checked my profile, my wife is white. As I read the forwarded email, it said, "Is this the Dr. Whitfield we want as an example for our students?" And the picture attached was a picture of my wife and I kissing on the beach in Mexico during a trip we took for our 5-year anniversary. The administrator asked Whitfield to take the photo down without explanation. He complied. The school district insists neither CRT nor the photo played a role in Whitfield's termination. Whatever the true reason, in the end, a school district lost an advocate for inclusion and embracing diversity, while opponents won a battle to silence those who challenge the status quo. Finally, we go to Pennsylvania, a microcosm of the larger national culture war against mask and vaccine mandates. The state Senate Health and Human Services Committee voted to advance a bill on Monday to ban COVID-19 vaccine mandates. The bill, written by Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano, addresses a problem that doesn't even exist. There is no vaccine mandate being enforced by the state of Pennsylvania. A mass firing of unvaccinated workers will stunt our economy and compound the issue of the labor shortage problem in Pennsylvania, said Senator Mastriano. Thousands of frontline medical workers will be out of a job. In 2020, we called them healthcare heroes. Now, they are viewed by some as expendable for choosing to exercise their medical freedom. The Pennsylvania legislature must take action to affirm that individuals have the basic human right to decide what goes into their bodies, Senator Mastriano said. The following day, Mastriano headlined a protest against COVID prevention measures at the state capitol. Speakers, including other state representatives, railed against the, quote, tyranny of Democratic Governor Tom Wolf's mask mandate for schools and daycares. Mastriano compared Pennsylvania to communist East Germany, adding that he would fight against what he believes is Wolf acting like a king. Not on my watch, Mastriano said. We will prevail in the end. Some Pennsylvania schools have taken up the anti-mask fight, filing a lawsuit against the state for issuing a mask mandate in the first place. The group, including parents, private schools, and 3 school districts, alleged that Acting Secretary of Health Allison Beam exceeded her authority in implementing the masking protocol. The Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania agreed in a ruling issued Wednesday, finding that the mask mandate didn't comply with, quote, formal rulemaking requirements, end quote, and was adopted without an existing disaster emergency declared by the governor. Only one judge of the 5-judge panel dissented, writing that the secretary has acted according to the statutory and regulatory authority conferred upon her to protect the vulnerable student population and school entities by the least restrictive and the most efficient and practical means available while the lethal COVID-19 pandemic continues to infect and kill the residents of this Commonwealth. Beam vowed to appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which is majority Democratic. James Davison Hunter, the sociologist responsible for popularizing the idea of culture wars in modern times, warned of the danger of America's increasingly volatile social and political discourse. Democracy, in my view, is an agreement that we will not kill each other over our differences, but instead we'll talk through those differences. And part of what's troubling is that I'm beginning to see signs of the justification for violence on both sides. Obviously, on January 6th, we not only saw an act of violence, talk about a transgression, but one that the people who were involved were capable of justifying. That's an extraordinary thing. Culture wars always precede shooting wars. They don't necessarily lead to a shooting war, but you never have a shooting war without a culture war prior to it, because culture provides the justifications for violence. And I think that's where we are. The climatological indications are pretty worrisome. Unlike Hunter, I am going to try to end with a hopeful thought. Those who promulgate culture wars from the top down, people like Donald Trump and Glenn Youngkin, do so to divide us. Pointing out our differences has always been a winning strategy for those at the top. It is when we, the masses, realize we have more in common with each other than we do with the rich and powerful that we'll be able to overcome the culture wars. Thank you for watching. If this video has been at all helpful or informative, please consider supporting me on Patreon.